Welcome everybody to this edition of O365Eh. So today we're going to talk about Teams phone system options, specifically the difference between calling plans, operator connect, and direct routing. So we have a special guest to help us dissect this subject, Mr. Evan. Nice to see you. Nice to see you with the Canadian hockey jersey. Why don't you just quickly introduce yourself, and then we'll dive into the subject.
Sure. Thanks, boys. Great to be back. Thanks for allowing me to come back this time again. I must have been okay last time. I'm Evan Zaleschuk. I'm now a cloud solution architect for Microsoft, and I work with partners. And my role is focused on Microsoft Teams, and specifically Teams Voice and the media workloads. Anything else, I'm not your person. We've got a whole group of people behind me that are a lot smarter that can help with everything else. So we can talk about voice stuff today.
Awesome. Well, you're just the guy to talk to because I know collectively on the podcast, I don't think we know anyone who has more years of voice experience than yourself. So let's kick things off with let's just briefly describe each of the options: operator connect versus calling plans versus direct routing.
Sure. Yeah. Well, we'll start with calling plans because that's the one that's been around the longest. And I think most people are fairly familiar with calling plans. And the whole idea there is when you want to be able to make and receive phone calls in Microsoft Teams, you have an option for calling plans. It's a license from Microsoft. You license every user in the organization that wants to make and receive a phone call. And you have two options, really. If you already have a phone number and you want that number to continue to be your phone number because you've had it for years, you can port those phone numbers over to Microsoft, and then everything's administered through the Teams admin console. So it becomes one pane of glass to administer your user's environment. Now, when we go from calling plans, the next ability that we provided to be able to make and receive phone calls was via direct routing. And in these scenarios, what you're doing is instead of porting your numbers over to Microsoft via calling plans or acquiring net new numbers that you can do with Microsoft calling plans, you're continuing to use the phone numbers that you have with your operator or your telco provider and those phone numbers that they provided you. So in Canada, if you've got Rogers, Bell, TELUS, Allstream, ThinkTel, you can continue to use those phone numbers via direct routing. But what you're doing now is you're adding another level of technology into your solution using session border controllers from many of the third-party vendors that Microsoft has qualified, which means now you're not administering everything through the Teams admin console, but you're also administering your session border controller through a web browser or web interface of some sort, so you have multiple panes of glass to administer the environment. Advantage of that is, well, you can do a lot with direct routing. Direct routing is available everywhere. Calling plans is not available in every country in the world. I think the number is now 33 different countries or subsidiaries where calling plans is available. So there are some advantages to direct routing because it's available everywhere. Plus, you have the capability to add additional functionality to your voice infrastructure that you can't do with calling plans. So calling plans, direct routing, and then now we have something called Operator Connect. Operator Connect is only offered through operators or telcos. Today, I think we have 22 that have gone general availability worldwide. In the way that I look at Operator Connect, it's really the combination of the simplicity of calling plans with some of the more advanced features of direct routing. What I really say to a lot of people is think of it as direct routing made easy. Now, why is it made easy? Because we're going back to only administering the environment through the Teams admin console. So what happens, and the magic really is, when you go into the Teams admin console, there's 22 operators that you can choose to become your operator. You can authorize them. You can authorize multiple operators in different parts of the world, and then they can provide phone numbers to you directly into the Teams admin console, so you can assign those phone numbers, those Operator Connect phone numbers, the same way you can assign calling plan numbers. So we have calling plans, direct routing, and Operator Connect. All of them are a little bit different. All of them have some similarities, but the important thing I think that I'd like to make sure people understand is any customer can use one, two, or all three of those in their environment, and that's done for different reasons.
Yeah, great description. Michael, I think you want to dive into how direct routing plays into this versus Operator Connect.
Yeah, I'm starting to see some confusion in the market with a lot of the marketing around Operator Connect and the admin center, of course, showing these operators. And there's starting to be this conversation that I'm having with customers that they're starting to not be aware that direct routing is an option still, and they're thinking that direct routing is going away. Because you maybe speak to Operator Connect and maybe that future of direct routing.
Sure, and he brings up a great point, Michael. And look, I'll never say never, but I'm pretty sure direct routing is going to be around for quite a while. And the question is why? Like, why direct routing if Operator Connect is this similar to direct routing and make direct routing made easy? Well, there's still things that we can do with direct routing that we can't do with Operator Connect. Operator Connect is a new product, and while it's based on direct routing, it's still new, and there's additional capabilities and features that are going to come to Operator Connect over time that you can do with direct routing. But that doesn't mean that direct routing is going to go away. And when I talk to partners who have a direct routing offer, direct routing as a service offer, and they're asking me similar questions that the customers are asking you, should we stop with direct routing? And my answer to them is no, because there's still capabilities within direct routing and what a session border controller can do that Operator Connect either can't, or the important thing too is, will that operator that you want to use operationalize the capabilities in their service offering the direct routing offers? So even if the capabilities are similar, will those capabilities be made available to customers? So yes, direct routing is still more complex to manage and maintain because there's more infrastructure. Operators are taking care of that in the back end, so it's not as visible to the customer. But I think at the end of the day is you still got to be able to sit down and determine what are the customer's requirements. Do they have any complexities? And if they do, maybe direct routing is the better way to go. But again, maybe it's direct routing in a combination with Operator Connect or direct routing in a combination with calling plans. It really depends on really the customer's business pains and business processes and how we're going to work to mitigate or eliminate those business pains or improve those business processes.
So I've been just adding on to sort of some of the things that you were saying. Maybe if we could just dig a little bit deeper into sort of the direct routing capabilities versus Operator Connect. Like, so where is the differentiation at this point in time? I know things may change in the future as operators may grow, but like, where's the sort of the delineation right now?
Sure, and I think one that comes up often is the conversation around survivable branch appliances. And the four of you are familiar with SBAs. You've probably worked with them a lot more than I have. But if you need that branch survivability, you have to use direct routing. It's not available with Operator Connect yet. Is it in the roadmap? It's being discussed because it is being asked for, but it's something that you would, if your customer has that requirement and they don't want to do internet diversity or multiple connections or for whatever reason, an SBA means direct routing with that session border controller. And then, of course, with a session border controller, you can add other capabilities like FXO, FXS for faxing and other analog devices. You can't do that today with Teams and Operator Connect. Maybe there's contact center integration through that session border controller. Is it possible in Operator Connect? Could be, but that might be a question that, back to that, does the operator want to operationalize that and build it into their infrastructure and offer it to everybody or not? So some very important differences. And actually, one of the things I wanted to mention that I think I neglected before too, and kind of along the same conversation, one of the other value propositions of Operator Connect is that whole concept of Microsoft Azure peering service. The idea of connecting, what we're doing is we're connecting the operator's network directly to the Microsoft network. So we're mitigating the latency and how many hops it takes to get to Microsoft's network, and it's all done via private peering. so we can do things like quality of service and with Operator Connect that we can't do with some of these others, like direct routing and calling plans. But Habib, I think the list is it's going to shrink over time. But again, it's so important to understand the customer's requirements and what do you really need from the solution to meet your business requirements.
So this is good. This is a good topic because I'll often get, we need redundancy. We have to go. We want SBAs. Like maybe they used Skype before, so they're familiar with them. So they feel, lots of customers feel like they want to go down this path without really understanding what it is they're getting into. And I don't make any qualms about it, but I lead with no hardware first solutions with all my customers. Like if at all possible, avoid having to deploy an SBC on-prem. Like absolutely leverage either calling plans or direct routing as a service. I think they're great. Services, I think the complexity of deployments and the time to deploy voice is immensely reduced. And I've seen it firsthand with larger companies opting to go, moving away from SBCs where they were using them on Skype and now to direct routing as a service. So, it does beg the question. It's like, I think, to me, are SBAs and SBCs worth it? And why, I was going to ask you why might a customer choose one or the other, but I really feel like you need to have that more involved conversation with the customer in terms of saying, like, yeah, you can go down and buy all this hardware and spend time with spinning things up and certificates, but can you really get very close to what you're looking for by just using direct routing as a service or Operator Connect?
Well, and Dino, you bring up a really good point, because really when we talk about Operator Connect, it's like I said, it's direct routing made easy. So it's all about that simplification. And I agree with you, like from a customer perspective, does that customer want to support all that hardware, those SBAs and those SBCs on site? I was a technical person once upon a time. I was a partner. You four know this, but when it comes to troubleshooting these issues, now you have to look in multiple places. You're looking at Microsoft 365 admin console, the Teams admin console, potentially the SBC, the SBA, not to mention now if there's a problem, there's potentially multiple support contracts involved. And yes, Microsoft has gone to a model where you call Microsoft and they'll engage with the vendors if it's necessary, but still it's a lot that you have to manage and maintain and potentially additional support contracts. When you move to direct routing as a service or Operator Connect, the value of that is it could just be one bill and everything's included in that. So from a customer, moving the complexity of not only the deployment, but the support, and that's additionally the value of some of these services and how you deploy them.
I think that's a perfect timing for some of the stuff that's happening in the message center right now. So I'm getting bombarded in the last couple of weeks with all the changes around direct routing. So TLS changes that are happening in January, the cert list that's going to be supported, the replace headers that are also being deprecated or removed. And so I think that goes back to the kind of that session border controller management. And so if you look at, previously, someone would deploy a session border controller with their lines and their PBX, and they can kind of just let it sit for years and years. And now when we see that SBC is connecting to Office 365 or Microsoft, that changes are more happening more frequently than they were before. So I think that does give you maybe another conversation piece of who's managing this SBC and also watching what's happening on the Microsoft side that may be changing or impacting. And then, if it is a managed offering, then it's someone else's problem, right? Because that provider is giving you that kind of peace of mind because they're managing that SBC for you.
Yeah, and Michael, that's a great observation, because as things maybe become simpler from an end user perspective, we're giving end users more and more capabilities, but what kind of complexity is that adding in the back end to be able to deploy and to support those solutions? So yes, we want to give those end users all the capabilities they could ever want, and then some. And then some of the new services that are coming, we're adding things like, I'm sure you've all heard of Microsoft Mesh and the capabilities that's going to bring. Like, oh wow, cool stuff. But what does it do from a deployment and support perspective, and how are you going to stay on top of all that? So part of the value proposition is still trying to simplify as much of it as possible, not just for the end users, but for all the people that take care of that environment, yourselves included, because there's so much more now that we'll be able to do.
So, yeah, I mean, really, really good conversation about that. I think it's going to be one that's going to continue, you know, and hopefully customers will start to see the light and go in a different direction than, you know, hardware first. Do you think mixing and matching is a good strategy? Do you think that there's a time and place for that? Should a customer try to adopt just one of the, you know, if they're all calling plans, if they can, if they have all their countries, all their locations have a calling plan available to them, or what are you seeing in that regard?
Yeah, and you know, I think it really depends, and that's when I work with partners and I talk to my colleagues, I put a lot of emphasis on what I call that consulting or that technical pre-sales role within the customer. And what I mean by that is digging deep into that customer requirements and what are they doing today? What do they want to be able to do? And then really, what do they need to be able to do? And the example that I've used for years is people come to me and they say, we need to do paging. Can Teams do paging? I had this scenario not too long ago where I had a partner come to me and they say, hey, we have a customer that needs paging. How do we do paging with direct routing or operator connect or calling plans? Instead of telling them how, I said, why? My question was, why do you need paging? They're like, They went back to the customer came to them, they came to me and they said, the answer is because they've been doing it for 20 years. And I'm like, well, don't you think there's the problem right there? You're using technology that was developed over 20 years ago. You're still using it the same way you were 20 years ago. Maybe there's a better way to do things. So do you really need paging, or could you use presence and could you use other capabilities that are in Microsoft Teams and give the end users and customers a better experience? So is it a better solution to go with just calling plans, just direct routing, or just operator connect? It could be, if you've done the homework and you determine, yes, this customer is the perfect candidate for 100% calling plans because we know what they need and we've helped them understand how they can expand or offer additional capabilities to their end users. Or maybe the case is, well, again, some of them can use calling plans, but there's also more complexity for certain users that require direct routing or direct routing as a service. So I'm hesitant to say one versus the other, or one good or two good or all three good. It really depends. And I know people hate that answer, but I use it probably every day. It depends. Did you do your homework? No. Look, son, look, daughter, go do your homework and then come back to me and let's have that conversation again.
Yeah, what I'm getting from this, like choosing anything in today's world, you really have to know your requirements from a business standpoint. You know, Evan, is there any good resources out there if an organization is about to embark on this decision, maybe like a worksheet they can fill out that helps them make these choices?
You know what, from a Microsoft perspective, I still refer people to docs.microsoft.com. There's a lot of information there on Operator Connect, calling plans, direct routing, and the documentation has continued to grow. Is there a single checklist that a customer could go through? Not that I'm aware of, but that's where I look towards, you know, big brain people like yourselves and partners to get engaged, because they're developing that and they're developing that whole conversation with the customers to determine their needs and what will work best for them. Because I don't really, you know, to me, there is no easy answer. If there was an easy answer, a lot of us wouldn't be employed anymore. We'd be doing other things. I might be fishing on my boat all the time instead of sitting at my desk. But I also, well, that's a whole other conversation together.
Well, yeah, to your point, I mean, some of this involves analyzing the current environment, everything from network bandwidth to other technical aspects that require some engagement there. So that makes sense.
Well, and before, I think the five of us were talking about quality of service and how is that implemented and is it important? And I think if I recall the conversation, which was only about 20 minutes ago, we came to the same conclusion. It really depends. Does a customer need QoS? Well, that's kind of a broad question. Why does the customer need QoS? And it was good because I don't know if it was Michael or Dino would say, well, the customer has told me, oh, we've got lots of bandwidth. Well, that's not the concern. It's how you're using your bandwidth, and how do you know how you're using your bandwidth? And it was interesting. I was in a conversation with a very large partner last week, and they went through the next step of that conversation to determine the customer's network quality. And they brought it to me and they said, look, it's really bad. And I said, yeah, but that's a point in time snapshot. What time of day was this taken? Was it like first thing in the morning, during lunch, right after lunch? Do we need to look at the peak times of when people are logging into the network or when they're working? I mean, over lunch, maybe not as many people are working, especially if the customer's in a single time zone. Do we need to consider time zones? Is a working day 9 to 5? Maybe 9 to 5, what time zone? Are we talking about Pacific time zone in Canada or Eastern time? There's so many things to consider. And that's why, again, I'm always reluctant to say, hey, you need to go this way or you need to go that way, Mr. or Mrs. Customer or Mr. or Mrs. Partner. It's like, let's determine what's best for you in that situation.
Evan, you mentioned it earlier. Obviously, the process of selecting a carrier is kind of clever. Like you go in, you can filter by I want a Canadian operator, get a bunch of options there. You select them, and then all of a sudden, you kind of stops the process there, and then the carrier kind of reaches out to you, and you negotiate something. What do you feel like? Like, might we see more advanced features coming soon? Maybe you can't talk about it, but it would be neat is if we if I want to select Rogers as a carrier and I pick them, and then I want 10 numbers, and I can start doing things and without having to talk to anybody. Like, is that the plan for Operator Connect?
You know what? Yeah, exactly. And we're going to progress in that simplicity of Operator Connect. So I was fortunate that I was working with Operator Connect before it was a product and internally in the development, and I've seen it go through a lot of growth. And what we used to be able to do compared to what we can do now is quite extensive, and that's going to just continue. And I can't really say too much, but if you consider that there's a reason why I call Operator Connect Direct Routing Made Easy. And exactly to what you were asking about, Dino. So yes, we can go in and choose our operator within the Teams admin console. We can authorize more than one if we need capabilities in different parts of the world for a large multinational organization. British Telecom in the UK, maybe Rogers in Canada, you can do that. And today, it all depends on whether you're a customer of that operator or not. If you're not, you can go through a process to become a customer and ask for phone numbers. And over time, and we're starting to see this in the Teams admin console, I'm sure you've all seen it, is when you go to assign phone numbers or provision new phone numbers, the same way you do in calling plans, you now have the option to choose calling plans or my operators. Still, when you choose my operator, it's a process that kicks off, but as we progress, I'll let you use your imagination to determine what's going to come next.
Yeah.
Nice.
Awesome. Well, that was a great conversation, and you heard it here first. Evan has renamed Operator Connect to DRME, Direct Routing Made Easy. I like it. Evan, always a pleasure talking to you. Thanks for breaking this down for us and sharing your experience. It's really useful.
Well, and you know what? I got to thank the four of you. I've known you for quite some time, and for everything that you do. 4 Rockstar MVPs, and Microsoft thanks you too, for sure. I'm saying that on behalf of Microsoft. That's the only thing I've said today on behalf of Microsoft. Everything else was said by Evan, and only Evan. Those are my opinions, and not that necessarily of Microsoft's. Maybe that'll keep me out of trouble.
Awesome. All right, everybody. Well, that's a wrap, and we'll see you in a couple weeks. Thanks.
Awesome. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Evan.